Hi, I'm Dan McCourt from the ScaleForge Group, and with me is Greg Shaffer from the Schaeffer Security Group. And we're going to talk about all things security as part of our security podcast series. Greg, welcome. It's I'm glad to have you here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, thanks for having me. I look forward to it as well.
All right, well, Greg, let's dive right in. Tell me about your background, your journey to start the company, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about your service and how this company came about.
Well, I guess it started 18 years old when I went to the U.S. Coast Guard Academy for my college education. So I went to the Coast Guard Academy, graduated in 1984, and because they paid for my 4 years of college, I had to serve 5 years in the Coast Guard. So I actually did 7 years in the U.S. Coast Guard. Basically, I was a ship driver, doing most of my operations down in the Caribbean basin. This is again in the mid to late 80s when they were bringing in, tons and tons of marijuana and cocaine on ships. I did that for about 7 years, and then joined joined the FBI after the Coast Guard, and did 20 years in the FBI. During that time in the FBI, I was assigned to the San Francisco division where I worked gangs and drugs. From there, I tried out and got selected for the hostage rescue team, the FBI HRT, which is headquartered there in Quantico, Virginia, right alongside the FBI Academy. I did the HRT for 6 years doing operations in Iraq, Kuwait, Pakistan, Yemen, Tanzania, Kenya, Indonesia, all the garden spots of the world. And did 20 years. Then from there, from the HRT, I went to the the National Counterterrorism Center, right there next to Langley. That was just opening up. That was right after 9/11. So as a result of the miscommunication and lack of communication between the CIA and the FBI, which resulted in the 9/11 attacks, the U.S. government developed the National Counterterrorism Center. And there was over 80 agencies there in the intelligence world that are now under one roof. And the National Counterterrorism Center, the NCTC, was born out of necessity to ensure that all these government agencies, all these intel agencies are working together, are sharing information, so incidents like 9/11 can't happen again. So I did that for 2 years, and then I went to Budapest, Hungary, as a first legal attaché there. What a great experience that was, working in the U.S. Embassy in a foreign country. I did that, then went back to Texas to again do some time there on the Joint Terrorism Task Force out of Dallas, Texas. And then in 2015, I retired from the FBI after 20 years and started my own company, the Schaeffer Security Group. So we've been around since 2015, so just now by 11 years old. And we specialized initially in special event security planning and management. As a result of my time on the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Dallas, Texas, I was personally put in charge of security for the 2011 Super Bowl, the 2010 NBA World Championship Series, the 2010 also NBA All-Star Game, which is held in Dallas, Texas. The Texas Rangers were in back-to-back World Series during the 2010-2011 timeframe. And of course, you have the Armed Forces Bowl, you have every Dallas Cowboy game, you have Texas Motor Speedway, so NASCAR events, multiple PGA events. So all these special events that are a target of terrorism, the FBI, of course, runs lead on that to prevent any acts of terrorism. Well, again, I was chosen by my special agent in charge to be in charge of all the security planning. So I really was able to develop a very unique skill set, and that is to do security planning for these large scale events. So hence I've done work on Olympics, World Cup, numerous Super Bowls and whatnot. But anyway, left the FBI in 2015, started Schaeffer Security Group. And again, one of our first big clients was people who did large events like these conventions and stuff. And developing security plans and operations and personnel to keep those kind of events safe. We also went into executive protection. My brother is a 25-year retired Secret Service agent, was on both the Clinton and Bush details. So I used his expertise and his knowledge and his input in developing some executive protection skills for some people that needed it.
Sure.
And then we do a lot of security vulnerability assessments where I do most of those myself based on my background with the hostage rescue team.
Right.
They definitely taught me things that most FBI agents don't learn on the HRT. So I'm able to go into a building, a warehouse, a firm, a company, a school, look around and determine what kind of security requirements, what their security needs are. And in
Sure.
today's world with active shooters, that's critical because we want to get in front of the shooting. We want to get what we call left of bang. We want to prevent the shootings, not just respond to them afterwards. And it just seems like to me over the past 20, 30, 40 years since these active shooters have been going on, that we focus a lot on response. Now, don't get me wrong, response is definitely critical and important, but let's prevent these things from happening so we don't have to worry about response. And that's where technology is coming into play now in today's world. Technology is coming into that prevention aspect of preventing active shooters.
I hear left of bang quite often in these conversations. So, it's stepping back. I know, like, just looking at your history, and I want to dive into left of bang for a second. But just to recap, you were drug interdiction in the Coast Guard, then skip forward to HRT, hostage rescue team, which is a really elite crew, and then counterterrorism. And moving forward, that history brings you to a very unique background and skill set that you've now converted into a number of different facets of a security company. And I want to explore a few of those, but let's just start with the ground level of left of bang, right of bang. And just for folks who aren't as familiar with that term or those terms, just to unpack that a little bit.
Sure. There's actually a book out there called Left of Bang, written by two Marine Corps officers, and they're the ones that coined that phrase. Left bang is the event. Bang is the active shooter where he shoots his first shot. Bang is when a bomb goes off. Bang is when the fire ignites. Okay, that's the bang. Mm-hmm. Left of bang is everything that happens on the prevention side of that, where you're looking at things you can do to preempt that, to stop that bang from happening. That is left of bang. Right of bang is what your response is to that bang. What's your response to that active shooter, the bomb exploding, the fire igniting, that sort of thing. So we want to get left of bang so that we prevent the act from happening. As I say, I do a lot of keynote speeches. Once that first round goes off, okay, bad things happen. That's when people die. Let's prevent. What can we do to prevent that first shot from ringing out? How do we prevent those shooters from getting into the building? How do we identify them before they enter the building? How do we, identify them and notify the authorities as they're, taking the weapon out of the trunk of their car? There are a lot of things we can do before that first shot rings out to stop that shooter before, that first shot rings out.
So, with that in mind, what does Schaeffer bring to the table to help, I want to say prevent, but minimize that? I wish it was prevention.
Well, you alluded to it, my HRT experience. There and the history of the HRT was founded in 1983 as a direct result of the Munich Summer Olympic Games in Munich, Germany back in 1972. The HRT was devised as a result of that fiasco where all those athletes were killed at the hands of terrorists. In 1972, the United States was already granted the Winter Olympic Games in Lake Placid in 1980 and the Summer Olympic Games in LA in 1984. So the HRT the FBI was tasked to develop a team that can address a threat similar to what happened in Munich in 1972. So that being said, 20 years in the FBI, 6 years on the 6 years on the HRT. I tried very hard to keep my name out of the media. Wearing balaclavas, never telling anybody what I did. Having my house being purchased, and I'm not on the lease or the ownership of the house. It's just my wife and her maiden name. Okay, so then I get out of the FBI, I retire, I start my own company. Now I have to differentiate myself. Okay.
Yeah.
What sets me apart than all the other FBI agents or all the other former Secret Service, law enforcement, Delta Force, what sets me apart? Well, my time in the HRT sets me apart. So I had a huge paradigm shift in how I addressed the media, how I addressed people.
Hmm.
I went from trying to hide what I did to almost boasting about what I did. Because
Right.
again, that gave me credibility, and that also sets my company, Schaeffer Security Group, apart from all the others. There's been less than 450 FBI agents on HRT in its history. Less than 450. So that puts me in a category in and of itself. So I use that, oh, he's just another FBI agent. What do they know about special event security? Good question. Well, I know a lot, and I did Super Bowls and NBA All-Star games, blah, 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 where I talked about
Right.
it. And I got that experience, again, mostly through the HRT and through the Joint Terrorism Task Force. So what sets me apart is that tier one type training when it comes to doing security vulnerability assessments, looking outside the box of what terrorists do and how they will look at this event, this venue, or this person as far as protection goes. What are they
Sure.
looking for as far as weaknesses go? I identify those weaknesses, and then I mitigate those weaknesses and keep everybody safe.
Oh, that is amazing. Just thinking about it,
I don't
I'm
know,
just thinking.
amazing, but it's a unique story.
No, no, I'm just thinking about going from a civil servant with a trying to keep things contained and protecting your personal life from your professional life, and then moving to something that may be a little bit more difficult, which is actually talking about what you bring to the table. And you sound like a humble guy, and coming out with things that you are capable of doing must have been a challenge at first, but now you understand it's part of the game. People need to understand what you've done so that they can trust you, and trust you they do, because you've worked with once you form the group, you've had some pretty big wins in terms of protection details and event security. Can you talk about a few of those?
Um, yeah, I mean, we did Earth Day Texas for 7 or 8 years. That's the largest Earth Day celebration in the world. 2 million visitors come to the Texas State Fairgrounds, and we did security for that, working very closely with Dallas Police Department. Um, I've done high net worth individual weddings. Again, I did Super Bowls in Dallas, Tampa, and Miami. Um, what else? As far as individuals go that we protected, you know,
Ones
those are
that you can
kind
talk
of, we
about.
can't really talk about that because
Yeah,
of non-disclosure. But we traveled the world doing protection for high net worth individual and celebrities. Done a lot of protection for things like what it's funny, once you hook into a certain group of people, they tell their friends about you,
sure.
so it seems like every conservative talk show host on Fox News, I've done security for at some point in time.
Sure.
Tucker Carlson, Kayleigh McEnany, who else? Greg Gutfeld.
Oh, yeah, a lot
Secretary
of
of
well-known
Defense.
names.
Secretary of Defense hates that before he became Secretary of Defense. So again, because you do one, they tell their co-workers, hey, you need
Sure.
security, this is the guy to do it. So
Oh, that's outstanding. That's quite a list, and I'm sure things picked up on after the unfortunate events with Charlie Kirk.
yeah.
So I'm sure that really opened some people's eyes to things.
Well, I don't want to get in the weeds about it,
No,
but my firm did do the security for Turning Point USA from 2017 to 2022. So for those 5 years, it was Schaeffer Security Group that did security for all of Turning Point USA events and for the personal security of Charlie Kirk. And on that day that he was killed back in November last year, a lot of people still thought that we were responsible for security. Again, that contract expired back in 2022. I had, haven't had anything to do with Turning Point USA for several years, and my heart goes out to that organization and to his wife and kids for sure. But they, at one point in time, Turning Point USA was one of my biggest clients, and since you can't say enough good things about Charlie and about that organization, they're to me they're true patriots, and they're trying to make the world a better place.
no doubt, no doubt. It's a sad day for sure. With that said, though, that speaks to challenges, current challenges that your firm is facing, other firms are facing. That you've spoken to it already. That things, their active shooters have grown, and they've increased. I'd love to understand your thinking about the genesis of that, behind it, what you might think why things have changed, and then how you are trying to prevent things. How have you changed because they have changed?
That's a loaded question. Why have active shooters all of a sudden become so prevalent? That's the $40,000 question.
It is.
I have some of a quick answer to that.
Sure.
We do not have a gun violence problem. I'm sorry,
No.
we don't. There's no such thing as, it's like blaming the car for DUI. Gun is an inanimate object. A weapon cannot cause anything to happen. It's the person behind that gun, behind that weapon. 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when I'm in high school and I'm hunting both before school and after school, and I have a lever action, 30-06 or 223 or whatever the case is, hanging in the back of my pickup truck. Because my friends and I are going hunting before and after school. So we have long guns in the parking lot of the school. Okay, we didn't have active shooters back then. So you got to ask yourself, what has changed since 1970 and 1980, when we didn't have active shooters? All of a sudden, 1990 with Columbine, when it started, what has changed since then? And society has changed. We have a cultural problem. We don't have stay-home moms anymore because it's gotten so expensive that there's no mothers teaching ethics and morals and the right and wrong to their kids. We have these, again, extremely violent video games and movies. And for those that poo-poo that, say that doesn't have a thing to do with active shooters, let me point out this to you. In the military, in order to get you to be accustomed to the horrors of war and the blood and the gore and the dangers of war, they show you horrific footage of what it's like in war. Why do they do that? To desensitize you, so that when you are faced with that same similar situation, you're not freaking out. You've seen it before, albeit on a video or a movie projector, but it's not the first time you've seen it. So movies and video games that are just insanely violent desensitize the public to those horrors. We have church attendance going way down. We have ADHD medication being handed out like M&Ms. We have antidepressants. And you look at these active shooters, 100% of them are antidepressants. You look at the package insert of an antidepressant. What's it say? Suicidal ideation, and juveniles that use this medicine. We should not be giving antidepressants to minors. We shouldn't. And again, the list goes on. Bottom line is there has not been an increase in firearm home ownership in the last 100 years. The number of homes that owns firearms, the percentage-wise, is the same today as it was 100 years ago. So it's not a gun problem. It is a cultural problem. We need to get in front of that.
That's interesting. And it's not something that I haven't thought of as well, but I don't count myself as an expert. I'm not trying to combat these things. Mm-hmm. So out there in the world, you now know about such things. Mm-hmm. How is the Schaeffer Group building or changing to try to meet that newer challenge?
We are meeting with dozens of companies a month that specialize in violence prevention, active shooter prevention, safety and security measures. I meet with business leaders and CEOs of firms, and we bring them under one umbrella. It's that way. It's like a one-stop shop, and we are focusing a lot on the AI aspect, that artificial intelligence that can really, really put you in front of the curve and get you that left up bang that we talked about earlier in our discussion, where you're able to identify and communicate a threat before the threat materializes completely. And you look at some of the active shooters, fairly recently, where they pull the AR-15 out of the trunk of the car in a parking lot. The Nashville shooter, for instance, it took her 2.5 minutes to walk from the parking lot to the front door, where she fired her first round and killed a security guard at that church school.
Sure.
2.5 minutes is a long time. Had they had AI and cameras that were in the parking lot, that's 2.5 minutes where the building could have been locked down, the security guard could have been notified, police could have been notified, and a whole lot of things could have happened long before that shooter got to the front door. And there's just incident after incident where that's the case. You look at all these church shootings as well. And they're drawing the gun from the car, they're going from the parking lot into the church and the congregation. And these things can be stopped before they are started by using some good AI. You want to have definitely a good response for sure, but if you train the people to know what to look for, those visual indicators, those pre-incident indicators of violence, if you train your people how to recognize those, again, that gets them in front of the curve. That gets them left to bang. The story I like to tell is in White Settlement, Texas, they had a shooter walk into a church, and he had a fake beard, fake mustache, and a fake wig on, and a long coat in the middle of Texas summer. And the church security team recognized them. The church security team recognized that individual as being an anomaly. Okay, something's not right here, and they approached him. Okay, but they didn't talk to him. They allowed him to sit down. They allowed him to get up, go to the bathroom in the foyer, and they come back and sit down. And then he draws that shotgun out, kills 2 people, and then ultimately he's shot and killed by one of the security guards. But the answer to that is simple. Engage. Okay.
Yeah.
If he looks suspicious, talk to him. Shake his hand. This is a church. You could give him a hug and say, "Welcome to our church." But you shake his hand. Are his palms sweaty? You look him in the eye. Is he looking you back in the eye? You ask simple questions. Hey, what's your name? Where are you from? Your first time here? Now, does he repeat those questions, or does he give you quick answers, which a normal person would? Okay.
Sure.
He's wearing and I did an interview of the security team the day after the shooting happened. And I said, well, how obvious was this fake beard, mustache, and wig? They're saying he looked like he bought it at a Halloween store. So it was very obvious.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why do you say, hey, brother, listen, got a question to ask you. What's with the beard and mustache and wig? He's got to have an answer to that. You ask him the question, he's got to have an answer. What's his answer going to be? So they could have done a lot. And you ask all these questions in the foyer. You don't let them into the area where the congregation is sitting. And they could have mitigated that shooting and saved 2 lives by just being that much proactive, getting left to bang. Instead, they waited for something to happen. 2 people were shot and killed, and then the response occurred, which killed the shooter. So again, what we're focusing on, again, with Schaeffer Security Group and all the partners I partnered up with is left to bang. Let's get the cameras in place. Let's get the AI in place. Let's train the people on site to identify those pre-incident indicators of violence. Let's put up the railings, the planters that stop a car from ramming into the building. So it doesn't look like a prison, but it's got the security, that looks nice and pretty, and it's not obtrusive, and it's not an assault on the eyes. It just looks like planters when in fact they are VBID preventers. So there's a lot of stuff we can do to get left and back.
Well, it sounds like the Schaeffer Group can support large-scale events, but also secure soft targets. And there's something there that's accessible to a lot of, whether it's a community center, whether it's a house of worship, a school. There's a number of different ways beyond just the large-scale events or personal protection. So there's a number of different services that you provide. And I hope that when someone's hearing this, they start identifying with it and say, gosh, if I spoke to them, I could save lives at my church. Or at schools are a little bit harder because you have to deal with a number of different government agencies. But when you have softer targets like community centers, churches, they are an obvious place where I think we need services of your team and teams like yours all around the country.
Well, the biggest hurdle is the fact that most people, their security plan is this, in one sentence: it's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And the hard thing about security is, and every person in the security world understands this, return on investment. What is the ROI on security? That's hard to come by. And particularly big firms, even churches and schools. Okay, I'm spending this much on security. What am I getting out of it?
Right.
And if nobody's been hurt, nobody's been killed, there's been no incident, they're like, we got nothing to show for it. How do you put a value on nothing happening? So getting the funds set aside for security is my biggest hurdle. And getting in front of the right people, of course, is always hard. But even in front of the right person, you have to convince them that it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to us. That's a hope. That's not a plan. And if things do happen, and they have found out that you and I had this discussion, Because the defense will find that out, or the prosecution will find that out should something happen, then you're going to be in a world of trouble because now you have liability as well. So there is that due diligence that is required for all schools, for all businesses, for all churches. You got to do the due diligence. You got to show that you have a plan. That plan's been communicated. The plan has been practiced. Because if something happens and you don't have any of those, liability-wise, you are really out on a limb. So getting people to understand that and then put the money down to pay for a consultant like myself to come in to do a security vulnerability assessment, to train your people, whether it's your teachers that train or whether it's a security team on site that I train. People need to be trained. And again, that costs money. And again, that return on investment is just hard to come by, hard to show for those penny pinching corporations. And in today's economy, everybody's pitching pennies.
It's hard. Agreed. And I think that is while it's not the best way to end this, I think that is the most appropriate thing for people to understand as we end this discussion, is that you only need it when you need it. And when you need it and you haven't planned for it, it's too late. So what are lives worth? What are your assets worth?
If you think security is expensive, wait to see what the cost is of doing nothing.
Yeah, I think that's a message that I really hope gets out there. And I do hope that this security series exposes that to more people, because I hear that often from different security companies, whether they're selling physical scanners, they're selling drone AI solutions for threat assessments, or they're selling the security services that you have. They're all important parts of securing our soft targets. And unfortunately, that is a real and present danger for our country today. So,
absolutely.
Greg, thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic. I've learned a lot. I hope that people who are listening have learned a lot. And if you have a security company that is doing similar things, reach out to Greg. He's got a lot of wisdom. I'm sure he'd be able to help you out and point you in the right direction if you are struggling with something that he's already dealt with.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Greg.
Godspeed and stay safe.
Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye.